With less than 3 weeks to go before Donald Trump is sworn back into office, the political landscape is shifting into overdrive. Establishment Washington is in a full-blown panic, with every move Trump makes sending shockwaves through the deep state, the media, and foreign governments alike. And just like clockwork, almost as if it were preordained, here we are. Exactly as Dr. Peter Hotez warned last month on MSNBC, the day after Trump's inauguration, January 21st. Hotez ominously predicted we'd see some real scary stuff coming down the pipe. And now, what do you know? The CDC and NIH have announced a major bird flu mutation that has infected a human in the United States, sparking fears of a new pandemic. The timing is impeccable, perhaps too impeccable. Once again, the machinery of fear appears to be revving up, and the establishment's media arms are running wild with pandemic hysteria. Democrats are amplifying the narrative, issuing warnings of catastrophe, and the world seems poised for yet another round of mass panic. The question is this just another coincidence, or is something much larger at play here? But before we dive deep into the story, a quick thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps us get the word out and keep this channel growing. And if you haven't already, consider hitting that subscribe button so you never miss one of our updates. Trust me, you'll want to stay tuned, especially as we get closer to Inauguration Day. Now, back to the big story. Trump is set to take office in less than 3 weeks, and to say that the establishment is nervous would be the understatement of the year. They're not just nervous, they're terrified. The prospect of Trump returning to power has thrown world leaders, corporate elites, and the DC swamp into complete chaos. Emergency meetings are reportedly being held across the globe as foreign governments scramble to prepare for what Trump might do. Let's not mince words here. This isn't just politics as usual. Trump is not like the last 5 or 6 presidents who played by the rules of the game, accepted the status quo, and served as little more than figureheads. Trump is a disruptor, and he's made it abundantly clear that he intends to govern in a way that fundamentally challenges the existing power structures. Reports indicate that Trump is eyeing some incredibly bold moves that would shake the foundations of global geopolitics. From discussions about acquiring Greenland to revisiting the status of the Panama Canal, Trump's plans are sending shockwaves through the corridors of power. These are not minor policy adjustments. These are first principles approaches to governance, aimed at tackling problems at their roots, rather than papering over them with band-aid solutions. And this is precisely why the establishment is so rattled. For decades, they've gotten rich and powerful off the status quo, and the idea of someone coming in to fundamentally change the system is their worst nightmare. Meanwhile, CNN and other legacy media outlets have been working overtime to probe Trump's inner circle, trying to figure out just how serious he is about these plans. Take, for example, this recent exchange on CNN. CNN anchor.
Watch.
Amidst all of this, Mr. Secretary, President-elect Trump has been talking a lot about potentially expanding U.S. territory. He's talked about absorbing Canada and Greenland. Now he's suggesting taking control of the Panama Canal, just like he did in his first term, talked about it. You worked under Trump. Is this something that he's seriously considering?
Well, we don't know. I think the best assessment is that it's a negotiating tactic, whether it's he's trying to reduce shipping rates in the Panama Canal or just somehow interested in acquiring Greenland. I don't know, but to me the common thread that I think is an important one are Chinese pursuing interests in both Greenland and Panama.
Going into these next 25 days, get ready, because we are entering this new era of American governance, which is very different than what we've seen the past number of years, and potentially even more different than what we saw during the first Trump administration. It is beginning to have a conversation, and this conversation is now happening essentially every day in almost every corner of the world, as many people, world leaders and people here in this country, wonder what will happen on day one. Potentially what we're seeing now is that foundation being laid for a very interesting first couple of days, first 100 days and beyond.
This is classic Trump. While the media and establishment figures scramble to make sense of his plans, Trump is playing a different game entirely. One where he controls the narrative, and keeps his opponents perpetually off balance. It's a strategy that worked brilliantly during his first term, and now it's driving the deep state and global elites into a frenzy. But amidst all this political upheaval, a new and deeply concerning development has emerged. Just weeks before Trump's inauguration, the CDC and NIH have sounded the alarm about a potentially deadly new pandemic. According to their announcement, the first severe human case of
bird flu virus shows mutations in first severe human case in U.S. That's from Reuters. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said on Thursday its analysis of samples from the first severe case of bird flu in the country last week showed mutations not seen in samples from an infected backyard flock on the patient's property. The CDC said the patient's samples showed mutations in the hemagglutinin HA gene, the part that plays a key role in it attaching to host cells. Now, why?
This has raised fears that the virus could eventually gain the ability to spread from human to human, triggering a full-blown pandemic. Bird flu could make COVID look like a minor pandemic, he said in a recent interview.
Think about this, watch.
I remember you told Chris not long ago that the bird flu could make COVID look like a little pandemic, which was quite alarming. I mean, is that really the case?
Yes, Brian, I really do think it's very likely that we will at some time, it's not a question of if, it's more of a question of when, we will have a bird flu pandemic. As you mentioned, unfortunately, bird flu has, when it does enter humans, has a significant mortality. Probably somewhere between 25 and 50% mortality. So it's going to be quite complicated. Once the virus gains the ability to attach to the human receptor and then go human to human, that's when you're going to have the pandemic. And as I said, I think it's just a matter of time.
Now, let's connect the dots here. Is it a mere coincidence that this pandemic scare is unfolding just as Trump is about to take office? Or is this part of a broader strategy to hamstring his administration before it even begins? Let's not forget what happened during the final months of Trump's first term. The pandemic was weaponized as a political tool, and it wouldn't be surprising to see a similar playbook being used again.
Who's to debate RFK Jr. even for millions in charity donations? Just saying, nope, not doing it, not debating that guy. Watch.
Here's the reason why we need to care about this stuff, Nicole, is that we have some big picture stuff coming down the pike starting on January 21st. Mr. Bloomberg mentioned H5N1. That I'm really worried about. It's all over wild birds on the western part of the United States and going up in the north. It's getting into the poultry. We're seeing sporadic human cases, no human-to-human transmission yet, but that could happen. It's in the cattle, it's in the milk, and that's just the beginning.
Meanwhile, California has already declared a statewide emergency over bird flu, citing a fatal case from Louisiana as part of the justification, even though Louisiana itself hasn't declared an emergency. Is this the start of a coordinated effort to generate mass panic and justify sweeping government actions? Only time will tell, but the timing is certainly suspicious.
First case of a human fatality as part of the reason, even though the case they cited didn't even happen in California. It happened across the country.
And then there's RFK Jr., Trump's pick for HHS secretary. If confirmed, RFK Jr. has vowed to clean house, firing corrupt officials at the FDA and holding them accountable for decades of malfeasance. In a recent interview, he made it clear that he intends to take on the entrenched bureaucracies that have allowed corporate interests to dictate public policy. RFK Jr. There are entire departments at the FDA, like the nutrition department, that need to go. They're not doing their job. Why do Fruit Loops in the US have 18 ingredients, while in Canada they have 3? It's because of corruption and corporate capture.
Roll the tape.
You say clearing out the corruption in your terms. Would that mean clearing out the top level federal service workers that are currently at the FDA and the CDC?
In some categories, I would say.
What does that look like? Yeah.
In some categories of workers, there are entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go. that are not doing their job. They're not protecting our kids. Why do we have Fruit Loops in this country that have 18 or 19 ingredients, and you go to Canada and it's got 2 or 3?
Would you eliminate any of the agencies?
To eliminate the agencies, as long as it requires congressional approval, I wouldn't be doing that. But I can get the corruption out of the agencies. That's what I've been doing for 40 years. I've sued all those agencies. I have a PhD in corporate corruption, and that's what I do. And once they're not corrupt, once Americans are getting good science and are allowed to make their own choices, they're going to get a lot healthier.
RFK Jr.'s commitment to reforming these agencies has struck a chord with the American public. Polls show widespread support for Trump's Make America Healthy Again agenda, which aims to dismantle the cozy relationship between regulators and the industries they're supposed to oversee. But this is precisely why the establishment is so desperate to block RFK Jr.'s confirmation. The New York Times even ran an absurd piece defending the artificial dyes in American Fruit Loops, claiming they're necessary for maintaining freshness. It's laughable, but it shows just how far they're willing to go to protect the status quo.
So watch this.
Debate. But with artificial food dyes, they have shown all over the world that they can use colorants that come from fruit.
This is the Canadian version.
This is the brightness of the Canadian version, just for visibility. And this is the brightness of artificial food dyes. So, of course, Kellogg and other food companies will argue children prefer this over this, just as they would prefer cocaine over sugar. That doesn't make it okay.
But I think,
As Inauguration Day approaches, the stakes couldn't be higher. Trump and RFK Jr. represent a fundamental challenge to the entrenched power structures that have dominated Washington for decades. They're a threat to the establishment, and the resistance they're facing reflects just how much is at stake. But make no mistake, Trump's momentum is unstoppable. With broad popular support and a bold vision for the future, he's poised to reshape the political landscape in ways we've never seen before. And the closer we get to Inauguration Day, the more desperate the opposition will become. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates. We'll see you next time.